Alrighty, for everyone who's joining, we're just going to give another minute or so for everyone else to join. We're going to start at exactly 11:02 Eastern. So excited for today's event. All right, a few more people are trickling in. We are going to go ahead and get started. So excited for today's session. Welcome to everyone who is arriving. Let's start off, as always, with how we do on webinars. I'd love to hear, where exactly are you calling from and what is your job title? I believe everyone has the ability to interact in the chat, so please do go ahead, write in the chat. I'm going to start New York City myself, and I'm a fractional CFO. Awesome. Thank you, Chris, Aditya, Turcolette, Adrian, Aaron. Oh, wow. We have people really from all around the world. We got India, we got Italy, we got Peru, Switzerland. Incredible. Oh, man, this is going to be so much fun. Excellent. Okay, really great. Well, welcome everyone. Today's session is really exciting for me because we are going to be covering my favorite topic when it comes to Excel. See, Excel is huge. It is gigantic. There is so much that you can do in Excel, and Power Query, to me, is the most powerful feature in Excel. But the challenge is many people don't really know what Power Query is. They don't know why it's so powerful. They don't have the pain points to understand what exactly they are missing. Well, today I plan on changing all of that. I want to do a deep dive on what Power Query is and show you some actual real life use cases for why you need to be using Power Query. And why, if you're not using Power Query, you may be doing a ton of manual steps for needless reasons. Power Query is going to make you incredibly more efficient. And this is all to celebrate the launch of my new course, Everything You Can Do in Excel, launching next Monday. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So before we begin, I did have a little bit of a conundrum with what to do with today's webinar. Because you see, there's so much that you can do in Power Query, and we really only have an hour together. We're busy working professionals. How am I going to teach everything in 1 hour? Well, this is what we decided to do. We spent countless hours preparing resources and materials to put together a video that you guys are going to see here first on what you can do with Power Query. We are going to play that video for everyone. I'm going to pause halfway, talk a little bit about what exactly we're looking at. Anytime anyone has a question, go ahead and put that directly in the chat. Afterwards, we're going to do a Q&A and go over, hopefully, each and every single question. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to be getting started with today's presentation on Power Query. Now, I am going to share a link for everyone who wants to access the video. I'm also, I believe I could pin it. All right, let me unpin myself and let me pin this over here. I believe we already have pinned. So I just posted the YouTube link, and on the bottom over here, you'll see this link right here. This will give you access directly to the templates that we're going to cover in today's session. So without further ado, let's begin and learn why Power Query is so powerful. What if I hired you to build me a headcount forecast? Could you do it? Here, I'll make it easy for you. Here's a template for you to use. You just need to fill in the data in these cells. Everything else will populate. Now, how do you think you could do it? Before I hire you, let me explain a bit more about what I need. See, our business has 4 departments, each with a department head. There's Gary Ledgerman, head of general administrative. Then there's Carl Helpman, who runs customer support, and Max Pitchmore, who leads sales and marketing, and Devin Brainston, head of research and development. So I need you to collect the hiring plan from all 4 of these department heads. Oh, and these department heads are gonna wanna understand who's currently on their team. So you'll need to send them a roster of who's in their department along with their relevant headcount information. Now, each department head should, of course, only be able to see the information related to their department. And when you're done, you'll need to get it all back into this main file. Now, do you think you can do it? Well, this is actually a task I've done a bunch of times in my role as a fractional CFO for some really fast-growing companies. But the first time I got a task like this, pretty much did it all wrong. And I'll bet it's not too different from how you'd approach this. I did it really manually. Let's first go over how to do it this manual way. Okay, so here I have my export from my payroll provider. And it looks like we have a lot of data here, a lot more than I honestly need. As a refresher, I really only need these fields here for my ultimate forecast. And ideally, I can get the information in this order so I could just copy and paste it as such. So let's start by first making a copy of this file. Okay, so let's first try to get all of the columns that I need over to the left. So I'm gonna insert over here a new column. I'll take job title, which is the first one that I need. I could just cut it with Control X and then paste it over here. Great, now it looks like I need first name and last name, but this is all in just one column. That's okay, I'll just again insert a column, cut it, and I'll fix this sometime later. All right, next I need department. Tell you what, to actually speed this up, I'm just gonna hit Control X, and when I come here, I can just hit Control plus, and it'll place my cut cells. That's one of my favorite little tricks for shortcuts. Okay, now we have location, then hire date. Now I don't have a termination date, so I'm just gonna leave that blank. Salary. Now I also don't have taxes and benefits. So tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add 2 new columns, one called taxes and benefits, and that's gonna be equal to this times, let's just say 20%. And then this is gonna sum both of those for my total compensation. And let's just auto fit these 2 columns. Great. Now I'll double click for it to extend all the way throughout. Okay, now for all of these columns, I actually don't need these. I don't need employee ID, date of birth, social security, email, phone number, emergency contact, or zip code. I'm just gonna select all of these columns and press Control Subtract in order to delete. Perfect. Now, just to make sure that I could easily copy and paste this information onto my range over here, I'm going to add a blank column after hire date for termination date in case we do plan on terminating anyone. And I'll also just type over here and mark FTE for everyone. Let me just copy this all the way down. Great. Now, just to be safe, let me also add in the department head here so I know who gets what. So I'm going to write department head, and now I'm going to refer to the table for the department heads. So now that I have the department head column, let's just set a filter over our range. And now I'm going to filter on everyone in general and administrative. And I'll copy and paste this department head's name. I'll come over here and I'll press Control V. Now let's just repeat these same steps really quickly for the other ones. Okay, that should be the last of it. So now if I unfilter, I can see all the department head names in my list. Now the last step, I need to divide this up into 4 separate files, one for each department head. Well, that's pretty simple. I'll just click on New. So let me first filter on General and Administrative. I'll select all this information. I'll paste that over here. And now I'll save this as General and Administrative Budget. And let me just make this bold so that department heads know that this is a header row. Great. Now I have my General and Administrative Budget. I'm going to go ahead and create a copy of this, and this time call it Sales and Marketing Budget. Now let me erase all the information for Gary's department. For Max's department, Sales and Marketing. Okay, now that we have our Sales and Marketing, let's do the same thing for the remaining 2. Okay, great. Now I have each of these departments that I could email out to the department heads. So now let me send an email out to Gary requesting him to complete his forecast. And now I wait and wait and wait until finally everyone completes their hiring plan. And now I can copy all their information and paste it into my consolidated headcount file. Great. And now I have everyone's budget file returned. I can see all of the hires that each department head wants to make. Great. Now I'll select all of my data over here. I'll come to my file and I'll paste it. And uh-oh, looks like some things got misaligned. Oh, I see. Well, for first name, instead of just the first name, I have the full name. And it looks like everything got misaligned because of that. Oops, I forgot something in my file. I need to split this out. Well, that's okay. I could just easily hit insert, then highlight this column, go to data, text to columns. Under delimited, I'm gonna hit next, and I'm gonna hit the space, and then finish. Okay, now let's call this first name and last name. Okay, now I can take this information. I actually don't need this last column. I can come back into my file and I'm just gonna paste it as such. Okay, looks like this completed for my research and development. I have now all of the salaries. This is great. I'm gonna have to though go through each of these files to now insert this new column and do that text to columns trick that we just did, but that's okay. I'm just excited to almost be done with this. I'll click finish. I'll rename this first name, then last name. Then I'll copy and paste it into our forecast file. And I'm just gonna repeat these steps now for sales and marketing and general and administrative. And I'll copy and paste my final department for sales and marketing. And now it looks like we're complete. We have our budgets for each department. All done. Way to go. I just built my hiring plan. And now I can... That's weird. Looks like Devin has an update to his plan. Okay, sure. Just send it back. All right. I guess what I could do is just take my information and copy and paste what he sent me and rearrange this and paste over that and done. Okay, great. Now that was a little bit annoying, but thankfully it was just a really simple copy and paste with that. Oh man, this time it's... Carl is texting me asking for an update to our hires. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I guess he's right. I only sent that as of July. And now we're in October, so I gotta send the information again. Okay, that's actually not too tough. I can re-export the information from the payroll provider, then rearrange the columns, then add the new column, then just copy and paste his information after I filter it, and then do the same thing for all 4 department heads each and every single month. Oh my God, I have a headache just thinking about this. Think of all... All right. I want to just pause over there. I don't know how many of you have had this exact experience. Rodrigo, you mentioned that it happens all the time. Aaron, I imagine that was a joke when you said it never happens. It happens all the time to me. I need to prepare information and I totally forget the fact that I then need to refresh that information. See, it's not enough to just do something once. In our jobs, ideally, we do something in a way where we could easily just refresh that data. And just now, the way that we prepared all that information, it was entirely manual. And even with the most efficient keyboard shortcuts, I needed to manually insert this column over here and rearrange the information, delete the other columns and add the custom columns and copy and paste that. It may not seem a lot of work when you're doing it the first time, but then when you do it the next month and the next month and the next month, you're spending a good 20, 40 minutes a month just doing something that, as we'll soon see, will automate. So if anyone else has had this experience, definitely go ahead and post it in the comments. And now let's go over how we could fix that using Power Query. Now, I want to just do one quick diagram to explain what exactly we're doing here. Like we spoke about, right? We are working with a company. We are preparing our forecast. We want to show the boss that we're going to do an amazing job. And a challenge is that we have these 4 different files. These 4 different files over here, these people need to only be able to see the information from their department. And they need to be able to pull in the actual information from our payroll provider, like JustWorks, Rippling, Gusto, whatever payroll provider you're using. And then they need to be able to actually enter in their projected hires. Now, like we said, we don't want the guy in G&A to see the budget from sales and marketing or anyone else. So these need to be distinct. We need to then suck up all that information into this forecast over here. And my favorite method for doing this is in using Power Query. So let's now go over how exactly using Power Query we could streamline everything that we just did. All the steps we went through to put together and manage this forecast on an ongoing basis. First, we exported our payroll information. Then we deleted and rearranged all the columns in the format we need. We added a few custom columns. Then we did a lookup on the department head's name for each department. Then we filtered on each department. We copy and pasted that information and collected back the information for each department head by copying and pasting their data into this final table. Well, what if you could hire your very own Excel assistant and you told that assistant to perform these 7 steps each time you snap your fingers? Your department heads can also snap their fingers and see their data updated. And you can snap your fingers and get back their updated plan. Man, that'll be pretty sweet. Well, you don't need to hire an assistant because that's exactly what Power Query is for. And there's so much more you can do with it. Power Query is known as an ETL tool. The E stands for extract because you can extract your data from multiple sources, like an Excel table, a separate CSV, or even a whole folder of workbooks in addition to tons of other options. When you extract that data, you can then transform that data in the Power Query editor. That's what the T in ETL is for. And those transformations can be pretty much anything you would normally do in Excel. And when you're done, you could then load that data back into Excel, either as a new table or a pivot table, or you can just keep it as a connection to reference later. That means that each time your source data gets updated with just one button, all the transformations you set up will be done and the output will be generated. Think about how crazy that is. See, Excel is a tool for managing and manipulating data. And data comes in many different sources and many different formats and sizes and shapes. Most of the time, your data needs to get transformed into different formats for you to either manipulate it further or to consume it into a dashboard like this. Well, with Power Query, it doesn't matter what your source data is and the structure and architecture of it. It doesn't really matter any of that because you could just pull that data in and transform it as you please. And then when you hit refresh, you'll get your output so that each time your source data updates, your output can update with just the click of a button. To be honest, there's so much more you can do in Power Query, but for now, we're gonna just go through the steps we just went through with our headcount forecast, but this time using Power Query. So now let's go through the exact same exercise, only this time more efficiently using Power Query. So here's my headcount export file, but here's the deal. I'm gonna actually create a new file and I'll go to data, get data from file, from text or CSV. Okay, now this window has popped up where it's asking me where exactly my file is. Well, this is the export file. So I'm just gonna click on import. Now I'll click this button over here, transform data. Okay, and now I'm in the Power Query editor. So I'm gonna repeat those same steps that we did last time, only this time I'm gonna do it in the Power Query editor. So I need job title to be the first column. So I'm just gonna move that over to the left. Then I have our name followed by the department, the location, the start date, we have hire date. Okay, we don't have termination date, but that's okay. Let's first bring in salary. And it doesn't seem like we really need any of these other columns. So I'm gonna select here, I'll hold down Shift, I'll right click, and I'll delete. Okay, so far this is pretty simple. So let's now add some custom columns. So to the right of salary, I'm gonna wanna add a column that takes 20% from my benefits and taxes. So I'm just gonna click on custom column. I'll call this taxes and benefits. Now watch how simple this is. I'm gonna click salary, insert, I'll hit the asterisk to multiply just like I would in Excel, and I'll type in 0.2. Then I'll click OK. And now I have my taxes and benefits column. Now for this last column, I need to get the total compensation. Well, that's really easy as well. I'm again gonna click on custom column and I'll just type in total compensation. And for that, I'll just take salary plus taxes and benefits. Great, now just 2 more columns. Let's enter in a new column called type to distinguish between a full-time employee and a consultant. For that, I'm just gonna put in quotations the letters FTE for full-time employee. Okay, now I just have one more to create, and that is the termination date. So again, I'll click on custom column, I'll type in termination date, and we actually don't have any data here, so I'm just gonna write the word null, and then I'll click on OK. Let's just move this to the left of hire date. Excellent. And now we have all of our data transformed. Now, before I give this to each department head, I want to remind myself of who exactly is going to get each record. Well, for that, we'll need to perform a merge. So first, let me click on close and load to. Now I can either load this back as a table, which will look like this, or instead, I could load it as a pivot table report, where I could, let's say, put the department like this, the full name over here, the salary, but I actually don't need any of these. I'm not done yet with this query, so I'm actually gonna click on only create connection. I could also add this to the data model, which isn't really something we'll be covering today, but if you want, I have a whole separate video on using the data model to create the ultimate dashboard. For now, I'll click on OK. Now I need to do a lookup on this table, wherever the department is shown, to pull in the department head's name. Well, the way we do that in Power Query is via merging. Let me first just give this a save, and I'll call this headcount Power Query. So in order to merge in the data, I'm first again gonna click on Get Data, this time from an Excel workbook. Now the table is inside this file called department heads. So I'm gonna click on import, and I'm getting this error message that it actually can't access this because I have the file open. Well, that's okay. I'm just gonna come to the file, I'm gonna close it, and now let's try that again. Okay, now it looks like it found this file with a table that I named department heads. And this looks like my data. Perfect. Let's go ahead and click on transform data. And now I'm back in the Power Query editor. Now I actually don't need to do anything with this over here. Instead, I'm gonna go back to our headcount export. Notice all of the changes that we made and how these steps are being repeated. Well, that's gonna come in handy soon. For now, I'm gonna click on merge queries. And the way that we're gonna bring in our data, instead of using a lookup function, I'm gonna merge it with this table called department heads. So I'll click department here and department there. Now I'm gonna click on OK, and I'm gonna click these little arrow buttons, and instead of bringing in all of the contents from this table, watch what happens when I click on OK. It brings in the full table as it matches to the department. I actually don't need that, so let me undo what I just did, and then let me hit this button once more, and let me just bring in the department head's name. Perfect! Now I have the department head's name, and I'm ready to start dividing up these files. Now, already, I could just load this back to my Excel file, and it'll make such a big difference having the data transformed like this. But let's take this to the next level. I'm gonna right click here, and I'm gonna click on reference. This creates a reference to whatever we have in this consolidated query over here. But this time, I'm only going to filter on Gary Ledgerman's forecast. And I'm gonna rename this General and Administrative. Now I'm gonna repeat these same steps by creating a new reference, this time instead of for Gary, for our next department head, Carl. And I'll rename this Customer Support. And I'm just gonna quickly repeat these steps for our other two departments. Excellent. Now I have a filtered view for each department head, and each department head can only see the data related to their department. I'm gonna click on close and load to. And again, I'm just gonna save all of this as a connection because I actually don't need to do anything in this file with any of these queries. Now, watch what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and exit this file, and I'm gonna open up a blank workbook. Now, when I click on data, queries and connections, I could then see this screen over here that showcases all of my queries. I wanna actually load each of these queries as a table, which will be useful in our next step. So I'll right click, I'll click on load to, table, and for the existing worksheet, I'm just gonna point to cell B2 over here. Perfect. Now I have my general and administrative. Let's repeat the same steps, but for each of these queries. So I'm gonna load customer support into a new worksheet. I'll do the same thing for research and development and for sales and marketing. And let's just name this general and administrative. And now that we have all the tables that each of our department heads need, I'm just gonna close this file. I'm gonna open a new file. And now this is gonna be the file that each department head is gonna get. So I'll name this general and administrative budget with PQ for Power Query. Now watch what happens. I'm gonna click on data, get data from file, and the Excel workbook that I want this data to come from is our headcount Power Query file. Now remember, that headcount Power Query file has several tables that we created. We have a table for customer support, for general administrative, for research and development, for sales and marketing. I really only need the general and administrative. So I'm just gonna click on load and check it out. Now I have all the data directly in this file. Now I can just call this existing, then I'll make a duplicate of this, and let's call this projected. And for that, I'm just gonna drag this table up to 0, and let's just change the styling on both of these. Excellent. Now Gary can see the information just for his department, and now he can enter in the information in this table over here. So I'm just gonna now start typing some stuff out. Now that we have Gary's forecast, let's just rename the query to say underscore completed. And we're gonna replace these same steps with all of our other departments. We'll set up a file by referencing our headcount Power Query file, and we'll pull in the table by hitting load. We'll change the table design. We'll make a copy of this. We'll call this projected. We'll call this actual. And again, we'll just underscore call this complete. Now each department head can just complete the information while I wait. So now I have all of my files with actuals and projections from each department head. The actuals are pulled in via a query that we used from a separate file. The projections are just set up as a table. They're not really set up in Power Query, but they will be when I pull them in to our headcount forecast file over here. So what I need to do now is consolidate all 4 of these files and print the table directly over here. Well, that's actually not too difficult. Watch what I'm gonna do. So let's pull in our research and development budget. Now this is what I want over here, the completed. So I'm gonna click on transform data, and I actually don't want this yet. So for now, I'm just gonna keep this as a connection. So I'll click close and load to, and I'm just gonna create a connection. Now I have my research and development connection to the completed forecast. Let's repeat those steps now for all the other forecasts. And I could actually just click right here and just click on close and load to, since I don't need to make any changes just yet. Okay, great. Now I have a connection to all 4 of my budget files. Let's also pull in our actuals. So for that, I'm actually gonna flip back to my initial file where we did all the transformations. And I'm gonna click on data, queries and connections, and then I'm gonna now take this headcount export, and let's load this as a table. Great, I should now be able to access this from my forecast. So when I go back to my forecast and I click on from Excel workbook, and I click on headcount Power Query, this headcount export over here, this is what I need. So again, I'll also just load that as a connection. Okay, great. Now watch how easy this is. I'm just gonna open up the Power Query editor, and now I have all 5 of these queries. Well, I'm gonna click on append queries as new, and I'm gonna choose 3 or more tables. So we already have the existing headcount. Let's now just hold down Control and select all of these and add it, and then click OK. So now I have all of my appended queries, my actuals, as well as the projections from each of these files. Now I could do some final changes. First, I actually don't need this column here, so I'm just going to remove it as such. Next, instead of full name, recall that we had a mistake before, and we need to use text to columns in order to get the first and last name. Well, let's go ahead and do that by delimiter, and we are going to use a space. And I'll click OK, and let's change this to first name and last name. Okay, everything should be in order, so let's just call this consolidated headcount. Okay, so now to wrap this up, let's just right click here. Let's click load to, and we're gonna create a table in a new worksheet. Now this has all of my existing and projected hires by department. I'm just gonna change this over here to a date. So I could just take this information, copy it, and then in our headcount tab, I can just paste it. And now everything gets populated, and we finally have our headcount dashboard. But here's the amazing piece. I now have connections to all these files. So if my source data updates, all I need to do is hit data, refresh all, and all of the information will update. If any of the department heads want to get their updated data, they can just refresh as well. And I could refresh to pull back in their information. It's all automated. Amazing. We just built our headcount forecast using Power Query. Think of how much time we saved. Now, a few notes now that you're familiar with Power Query. First, we probably could have even sped this up further by connecting to our payroll provider's website so that all we needed to do was hit refresh from that connection and all of the existing hires would get pulled down. Then when we connected our files together, we technically need to put those files in the cloud under a shared drive so that everyone on my team can access them. And then lastly, there's so much more you can do in Power Query that we haven't even spoken about. For example, one of my favorite things is to take a profit and loss that looks like this and unpivot that data so that it instead looks like this. And this allows us to more easily manipulate our data with our formulas. I remember when I first learned about Power Query, my mind was blown at what you can do with it. And the truth is, Power Query is just one aspect of Excel. There's so much more you can do in the tool, and that's why I'm so excited to announce the launch of my new course, Everything You Could Do in Excel. This course is perfect for those in the beginner to intermediate range who are looking to take their skills to the next level. We'll walk through each and every section of Excel and go over how to use each feature. Oh, and we'll have a ton of fun with tons of different infographics and engaging videos and homework problems and Excel templates that will all get you really comfortable using Excel. My course goes live on October 7th. But today, I'm giving you a 50% discount if you sign up to join the waiting list before it goes live. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on Power Query. And if you want even more practice, you can learn how to build a pivot table profit and loss using Power Query right over here. And I'll catch you next time. Alrighty, everyone. That was a lot of information that we just shared. I recognize it may not have been so easy to follow everything. You can imagine if I didn't have all those edits and the ability to make all those animations, how much more challenging it would be. But I'm so glad that we now have everyone here. We actually had a bit of a mistake with this meeting. We didn't realize it was capped at 150 people. So you 150, you're very fortunate. We're a small group. We can go over every single person's questions. So just go ahead and put them in the comments and I'll get to each one by one. And while we're waiting on those questions, I want to just go over a little bit more on what I said at the end of the video on our new course on Excel called Everything You Can Do on Excel. So I'll just start by answering a few questions over here that I received earlier on the course. What's really great is this course is going to walk you through every area of Excel. We're literally going to dissect the entire Excel file, every single button, every single feature, every single area we're going to be going over in this course. We have over 100 different videos, dozens and dozens of infographics, tons of Excel files to help you ultimately become an Excel wizard. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, Excel has easily been the biggest ROI in my career. It's the reason why I've been able to scale my accounting firm to dozens of people, dozens and dozens of clients. And it's the one skill that I would recommend to anyone who works in finance and accounting, as well as business as a whole. So I'm excited to be able to give this course for 50% off for those of you who sign up before it goes live on October 7th. And of course, if there are any questions on the course or anything else, just go ahead and put it directly in the chat. So I'm just going to wait over here now for any questions that we have. It looks like, okay, Anthony, just maybe jumping ahead. Dummy proofing for managers for validation, etc. Was that just to simplify scope? I'm not sure what exactly you mean by the validation, but again, the idea is you want to, make sure from a security perspective, they could only access information related to their department. And then I like to have things in two separate tabs, one for actuals and one for projections. So using Power Query, we can easily just append that information together. Now, as a general idea, whenever you're presenting information to department heads, you're going to want to not only make sure they're familiar with how to do the task, but you're going to want to also dumb it down. You got to realize that these people don't necessarily have a background in business, finance, accounting. They may even have very basic Excel skills. So you're going to want to try to make it as dummy proof as possible because you're definitely going to get friction in the process and you want to eliminate that as much as possible. So thanks for your question, Anthony. Okay, Reed has a question. What about the need to have for headcount during a startup? Plans are constantly changing. Power Query is ideal for that. I work for Toyota in North Carolina. That is really cool. You work for Toyota. That's awesome. In terms of the need to forecast headcount for a startup with the plans completely changing, that's actually exactly why I suggest that you use Power Query, because the data is constantly changing. Every single month, you're making more hires. You need to refresh your actuals from that source data. And then every single month, those department heads are going to want to see, like, that text message that I received. Hey, how am I doing according to the plan? I thought we would hire these 5 people in my department. Did we hire them or not? So using Power Query, the whole point is that you can create connections, and those connections will load data that you transformed only once in the Power Query editor. So people can continue making changes to their plans, and with one click of a button using the refresh data button, you can pull back in that information. So that's a really great question, Reed. Thank you for that. That's exactly the reason for why I suggest that you use Power Query in a large organization like Toyota. Okay, Danny K, in the course, does the course have a feature and interface to interact directly with Excel files within the website itself? Is that correct? That's a feature I've seen with some courses. No, you would be able to download the Excel files directly from the course. I haven't really seen the ability to interact directly in the Excel file. That seems really cool, Danny. I'd love to see that if maybe you want to send that to me via email, josh@eurocfoguy.com. But a good question related to that is, what if you're working through the course and you have a question about a specific module in the course? How exactly would that work? Well, we have a whole Q&A section on every single course module. So any video, you have a question, how do I do this or whatever, you just post it in the chat and myself or someone from my team will be glad to go ahead and answer that. Thanks for your question, Danny. All right, Kunal, is the course available with lifetime access? Yes, it is. You buy it once and you'll be able to access it as long as you'd like. Maxime, is Power Query work well in a collaborative environment, like in a file on a SharePoint or in a OneDrive or even in a team group? Yes, in fact, that was something that I mentioned you may have missed at the end of the video. That is a really big thing when working collaboratively with Power Query. See, the idea is you want to be able, instead of pointing directly to files like we did in this video, you want to be able instead to be able to point to a location in the cloud. So what's amazing about Power Query is there are all sorts of different sources you can pull in data from. It could be from a table, it could be from an external CSV, it could be from a database, it could be from somewhere in the cloud. Any information that you need, you generally can extract. And when you're working with a team, you're going to want to use a tool like SharePoint or OneDrive. So thank you for that question, Maxime. Okay, Alay Edin, could you share with us the Excel file you use for forecast headcount? Yes, you can find that in the actual video. I'm going to post, again, the video to the YouTube link. If you guys also wouldn't mind giving that video a like and helping us with the algorithm, that would be great. But right in the description, you'll be able to see it. Should also be a pinned comment directly over here. Okay, when looking for your query, you have multiple data queries. All right, so Tom, thanks for expanding on this question. How can you limit the options only to what you need instead of seeing all of them? I can see developing dozens or more of these. Okay, so the idea is you have this master file. Let's maybe go back to the screen share that I had over here. So again, you have this master file that showcases all of your information over here. You want to have this master file pull in the data for everyone's budget as well as the source data for each headcount export. So you're going to have all of those queries loaded in this master file over here, but you don't want each of these individual files to see all of those queries. A lot of that contains sensitive information that they shouldn't be able to see. So that's why you're going to load in only the relevant query for G&A, for sales and marketing, and so forth into these files. So these people can only see the information related to their department, and they'll be able to then project information from their department to be able to suck it back up as such. In order to then access each of these individual queries, you could just click on the Queries and Connections tab and see the data directly there to look into it. So I hope that answers your question, Tom, but if not, feel free to just share more context on what you were looking for, and I'd be glad to assist. All right, these questions are good, guys. Please keep them coming. We're doing great on time. We have another 20 minutes. We're zipping through all of this, so please keep them coming. Aeneas, does the course are only recorded videos, or are there live classes? Right now, there are only recorded videos. I am going to be launching a community later this year, and I would love to see all of you as part of that community, and there will be live workshops just like the one that we're doing now in that community. But for now, it is only going to be pre-recorded. Reed, thank you so much for joining. I'm really glad that you enjoyed this one because we spent a lot of time. And like I said, Power Query is really just such a powerful tool, such a game changer in my career. And I'm really glad that people now get to see just the true power of it. Aaron Smith, I just purchased it. Will I have lifetime access to the content? Nope, it will be, sorry, yes, it is not limited time. It will be lifetime. You'll be you'll be able to get access to all the data, all the source files, all the templates, all the infographics when it goes live next week. Jeff, how does Power Query handle if someone's full name contains a middle name? Well, that's not really a Power Query question. That's more a data cleaning question, which you can do in Power Query. So recall in the beginning of the video, we did that text to columns split where we just said there's going to be a delimiter where for whenever there's a space, you're going to split that into multiple columns. Now, from what I understand, with text to columns, I'll need a refresh in the actual Excel how exactly to do it. But from what I understand, you can choose to only select the first occurrence of that delimiter, in this case, a space, which means if it's John Abraham Smith, it'll split it to John and Abraham Smith, versus treat each consecutively where it'll be John in one column, Abraham in another column, and Smith in another column. So the key that I really want to dial in over here is the idea that whatever you can do in Excel, you can do text to columns in Excel, you could also do that in Power Query. But the difference is that if you do it in Excel, every time you need to refresh that data, you're going to have to go through those steps manually. When you do it in the Power Query editor, you're in essence training this robot in Excel to watch each and every single step that you're doing so that when you hit refresh, when the source data then changes, all the outputs will then update based off of those transformations. So thanks for that question, and I hope that answers it, Jeff. Jignasa, thanks for your question. How much the cost is for the Excel course? It is $199, but if you sign up before it goes live next Monday, you will be getting 50% off at only $99 for the course. Tatsi, if you update the monthly headcount file and rename it, will you use the connection to Power Query or does it stay? So if you link directly to a file that isn't in SharePoint or on the cloud, then it is going to have an issue because it's going to look for that exact file name. But if you create it in a way where you link it on SharePoint to a reference to a file, that'll be able to keep that as such. So that's just a quick nuance, but there most likely could be unintended issues if you do a refresh to an external file. You'll just need to set it up a little bit differently. Remember, with Power Query, you could load data from different sources and in many different ways. You could point directly to a file. You could even have like 10 files in one folder and load the entire folder to append all those files together. You could load it directly from the web or from a database. There are limitless options. So you may want to opt for an option that wouldn't be as sensitive to the actual file name. That's a good question, though. Thank you, Tatsi. Maxime, thanks so much for joining. Anthony, can all materials and videos are downloaded offline for use? Yes. In the course, every single piece you can download directly to your machine. I don't think you can actually download the video itself, but all the infographics, all the Excel files, all the templates, dashboards, and all that, you'll be able to access as well. All right, let's continue. Tom, great questions over here. Loving the engagement. Keep them coming. And if more than one master file, it is the master files that I'm referencing. So you can have master files. It's really how you want to set up your data architecture. Some files you're going to want to have multiple queries on. Some files you may just want to have one query on. The question becomes, how exactly do you want to load the information and connect it to these different files? So the master file, generally you're going to want to have one master file that pulls in all that data, but you can maybe have two master files, one that has 50% of the data, another that has 50% of the data, and they can talk to each other. That can be an option, whereas each departmental file can have just one individual table loaded. It's really depending on what you want your architecture to be. There aren't any limits there. So thanks again for your questions, Tom. Okay, Venkatachalam, I need a job for Osman. Thanks very much for your time and effort. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for joining. This has been a lot of fun. Please, a small question, Dr. Josh, is there a certificate of attendance for this webinar? Unfortunately not. We don't really have that certificate, but that's good feedback. Maybe we'll consider that for the future. Andrew, you have to drop off. Thank you so much for joining. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. Jennifer, you got in late. Will there be a recording? Yes, you absolutely can take a look at this recording, and we look forward to sharing it. Maxime, I have a tough one. I love tough ones. Guys, please share your tough questions in the comments. Again, in the context of collaborative work, did you ever issue a problem related to time and region format between multiple users that make the query crashing or not working properly? I have generally seen that before. Not so much in the context of Power Query, but just Excel in general, where you'll have a date where it's like, month, then day, then year, but someone else gets it as year, then day, then month. There are a few different ways that you can handle it. You can go into your settings to change your settings to a specific locale. I don't have the answer for how to handle each and every single exception. The only thing I could do is validate that, yes, indeed, it is an issue I have seen come up from before. It's a challenge, but there definitely are ways around it. All right, let's continue over here. Jignasa, thanks so much for joining. Chris, how do we use Power Query if the data source is a web that you need credentials to access? So you'll have to authenticate to that location in order to pull that in from the web. That's generally how you would do it. When you have a cloud like SharePoint, that's actually exactly what you would do. You would connect using a link. You would share the link to that SharePoint folder, to that SharePoint file, and then you would need to authenticate with your SharePoint or OneDrive credentials to be able to access. So that's a perfect way that you can block people from being able to access, let's say, data you don't want them to have access to. You don't want the guy from G&A to access the information from sales and marketing, so you can have that authentication block that in that way. Danny, you're very welcome for answering the questions. Regarding the course, how easy is it to refer back to various topic sections of the course, features within Excel? Is it structures that will be doable as needed? Yes, the course is over every single area of Excel. We'll go through the home ribbon, we'll go through the insert ribbon, we'll go through the page layout ribbon, we'll go through a general Excel file, the file, everything that you need. You could refer back to the individual videos, you can refer to homework problems, the individual actual course videos. It's all in a structured format that you could access. You're very welcome, Tom. Thanks for all of your amazing questions today. Great engagement. Gemma, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining, and I'm glad that you'll be sharing it with your manager. Like I said, Power Query has been such a game changer for me. People don't realize how painful, how much they're missing out when they don't utilize something like Power Query. You're welcome, Adele. Thanks for joining. Jim, thank you so much for supporting us and buying our course. I can't wait for you to try it out. We've literally been making this for months and months. Last year is when I started developing this course, and we're just about getting it to the finish line now. So thanks so much for joining and taking advantage of our 50% discount. Jignasa, am I going to be sharing a recording in the email? Yes, you will get a replay of our course. Jeff, in the video, you're welcome, Maxime. Jeff, you mentioned in the video about when you might load to the data model and some extra trainings video. Please explain further or post the link. So I shared the link earlier. It is my most popular YouTube channel. If you guys aren't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we are putting so much time and effort into videos like I just showed you today. And this is my most popular one so far. So I'm just going to share that over here again, that YouTube video. It is called I Built the Ultimate Dashboard. And from there, it's over an hour long. We're going to build an amazing dashboard in that video using Power Pivot to create relationships between different people, different departments like we have over here, again, using Power Query. So I look forward to hearing your feedback on that video. All right, thanks for that question, Jeff. Jennifer, I am taking an intermediate computer app and concept class in school. We are doing queries in Access instead of Excel. Is it about the same? I'm not familiar with doing queries in Access. Someone else asked a question earlier saying ETL, an ETL tool, which again stands for extract, transform, and load. Is that just related to Power Query, or is that a tool in general? An ETL tool can be any application. I imagine Access has that as well, where you're creating relationships. You're able to potentially clean that data, transform that data. You could even load information from an Access database using Power Query. So no, it is not the same. I don't have experience using Access, but given that it's a Microsoft product and that it's compatible with Power Query, I imagine it's not too difficult. And if you understand the underlying concepts of how to ingest data, the extract in ETL, how to transform or clean that data, the T in ETL, and then load that data back, whether it's to a pivot table, whether it's to a table or just a connection or to the data model. Once you understand that concept, the difference between structured and unstructured data, well, from there, it really doesn't matter what ETL tool you use because you'll understand the foundations. So thanks for asking that, Jennifer. That sounds like a really cool class that you're taking in school. Kunal, what is the total duration of the course? I believe it's over 2 hours. I don't know, Octavian or Ahmed, if either of you know that answer on how long the actual course is, but it's hours. Aaron, you just purchased. Love the way your video was set up and animated. I'm so glad to hear you enjoyed this. This is one of our very first webinars that we did in this format, and I have so many more coming. What I really loved about the way that we did today's session, again, if I would have done this all live, we would still be going and me teaching you all of that. But the fact that I was able to share a video with animations, with edits, with cuts, showing you exactly what I wanted, and also the fact that in real time I was able to answer all of your questions, that was just a huge game changer. So we're definitely going to be double downing with that approach, and I'm really glad, Aaron, that you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you supporting us by buying our course. What is the cost of the course at 50% off? So the full price is $199, and if you buy it before Monday, you'll be able to get it 50% off at $99. An amazing price, one of our most affordable prices yet. Anis, thank you so much for joining, and thanks for your kind words. That was really great. Yes, Jignasa, that is correct. You have a 50% opportunity until Monday. Bill, is there a table of contents for the course? I believe that there is. Let me see if we have it directly on our course page. Yes. So I'm just going to do a really quick screen share. You can see over here every single section, at least, that we're going to cover. We don't have the actual videos as a whole, but as you can see, we're literally taking you through each and every single area of Excel. So that should help. Okay, let's see. You're very welcome, Jeff. Bill, also nice to see you here. Thanks for your email yesterday on joining this webinar. Trevor, the actual name of the data model video is I built the ultimate one-click dashboard free template. Boom, you nailed it, Trevor. Thanks for sharing that with everyone. Yvonne, thank you so much for signing up for our Excel course. We put in so much time and effort. We barely monetize our company. Honestly, we've just been trying to grow the audience and give as much value as possible. So this is one of the fewest courses that we've done. We only have 2 or 3 other courses. So the fact that you supported us, it means the world to me. Thank you so much for supporting us and joining this course. All right, we got a few other information. Jennifer, you were talking again about your Excel course, your Access course. We're extracting information, importing data from Word and Excel. There you go. Again, with an ETL tool, you can extract data from all these different locations. So it doesn't matter what ETL tool you're using. The key is your ability to connect to data directly, so that once you have that connection in place, once you have the transformations in place, all you need to do is hit refresh and all those transformations happen. Okay, Ahmed, Excel has limitation with big data, one file with over 50 megabyte in size, even Power Query will not be able to handle. I have seen that before. One of the things that you can do, first, generally, if it has 50 megabytes, Power Query uses structured data, which means your data should generally be in a tabular-like format. What you can do is try converting that 50 megabyte file into just a CSV. Now, you may have hundreds of thousands of rows, which can still raise the actual file size, but generally, any sort of like edits that you make, any formulas that you have, any sort of like design changes, that will add to the file. So if you make it a CSV, you have it as an external file that you then pull into this file, and you load it as a connection. It still may be slow, you still may have these types of issues, but generally, one of the biggest selling points of Power Query is your ability to work with really large data files, because you're not loading in all that information. You're creating a connection to that file, and you're only loading in the relevant information that you need. So I don't know your specific case, and I can understand there still being some issues, but I will say that generally there are a lot of limitations that are broken whenever you use Power Query. So that should help. All right, Jeff, I'm so glad that you like our emails every single day. It's not easy keeping up with sending all this content, but hearing from you that you enjoy our emails, that really means a ton, and that gives us a lot more energy to continue. I'm really lucky. Octavian and Ahmed are 2 incredible people on my team who have been helping me every day with that. So a huge thanks to them for all of that support, and thanks for your feedback, Jeff. All right, Jorge, hello. The platform on Zool was full since 9.05. I am so sorry. We have a limitation. We didn't realize that our current plan on Google Meets only allowed for 150 active participants. We had over 1,000 people register for this webinar. So I really do apologize for that inconvenience, Jorge. We're going to share the full replay of this webinar. You also have the YouTube video. You can even start watching right now. So we'll send that. And again, thank you so much for your patience with that technical difficulty. Sharon, how would you consolidate data that comes over into transform data into multiple pages and multiple tables? So there are a few things that you can do. Generally, each query can be combined together via what's known as append. Append is when you, in essence, take one table, another table, and you stack it on top. So you generally want to have all the information via the same headers the same columns, because if there's a new column in one query, it's going to create that in the consolidated column and it'll just show null for the other query. So appending queries is how you join all that information together. You can also create a reference to a query. So recall that I had our source data and I created a reference to that source data. So anytime I changed that source data, I could reference, and in that reference file, any other automations I made to that specific query will be updated from that initial query. So that's the general idea of how you ultimately combine information together. There's also a merge. A merge is pretty much like a lookup. Now, some of you may be using VLOOKUP. That is totally not something you should ever be using. XLOOKUP and index match is totally better. But the way that you do a lookup in Power Query is by combining tables together, by utilizing that similar. So that's what we did with department. Remember, we pulled in the actual department name. We used a merge in order to do that. So I think that was a little bit more information than you asked for, Sharon. I hope that ultimately helped with the referencing, with the appending, and all the different ways that you can do that. You're very welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining. Anthony, thanks for all of your questions. The course outline suggests it's more basic for beginners. Would your Power Query use case today be techniques I would learn in the course? So yes, that is a very important thing that I want to be upfront about. The course generally, because we're explaining each and every single area of Excel, it is more geared towards beginners and intermediates. Now, even if you are advanced, I imagine there are going to be some things that you're going to learn in the course, like I learned when I was creating this course. But at the same time, it is mainly for the beginner and intermediate level. We are going to be launching additional courses later on in the next few months around more advanced topics. But to answer your specific question, Power Query is part of Excel. And I promise you in this course, every single thing that you can do in Excel is going to be in this course. So yes, we also have a Power Query module. It's a completely separate module showcasing how you can do accounts payable with multiple bills being loaded and extracted into an Excel file and combined via one folder into one file with all those transformations. So thank you for all of your questions, Anthony. Jignasa, can you please give a link to your Excel course? Yes. I shared that earlier, but why don't I go ahead and share that again over here? That is the Excel course. You're very welcome, Ahmed, Amar. Hey, Octavian, thanks for saying hello. Most, you are welcome. Danny, thank you for sharing that video. Maxime, what is the coolest, craziest advanced tool or use case you built with Power Query? Man, I love that question because there really is no limit for what exactly you can do with Power Query. Let me take a second to really just think about this. I think anything involving departmental budgeting is really helpful. Okay, I got it. So I once had this client who wanted to understand what was happening with their cash flows. Now, for all of you who work in finance and accounting, you understand that our profit and loss under the accrual basis is not the same as the statement of cash flows. They're two completely different statements. The profit and loss tells you about what you are earning and consuming, whereas the statement of cash flows shows you where your cash is going. Now, many of you may also know that there are two ways to present a statement of cash flows. You can do it utilizing the indirect method, which is in essence just taking your balance sheet and taking the difference between every balance sheet account, or you can use it via the direct method, which is more straightforward, showcasing like cash paid to employees or cash collected from customers. It's very rare for companies to prepare using the direct method. Instead, the indirect method, because you really just need a balance sheet and an income statement, is typically what's used. But I had a client who was so stubborn, and he said, Josh, I don't care. I want to see in a P&L format what is happening in my business on a cash basis. But their accounting software showed it on the accrual basis. So how do you toggle between that? So I built this crazy tool that pulled in their bank register, that had a mapping for each and every single vendor. Think about it. The bank register is going to show a payment you made to a vendor. It's just going to show accounts payable. So I had to create a separate table where I said, for each vendor, this is the actual expense account. I created all of these relationships. I downloaded the bank activity, and I created this mechanism where they were able to see a profit and loss that would typically be under accrual basis under their accounting system transformed into the cash basis. That was easily one of the most powerful things I ever accomplished in my career, and Power Query was a really huge part of it. And it paid off. It was one of the biggest contracts that I ever landed. It helped us expand our fractional accounting firm, which made a really big difference. So that's how I would answer your question. Thanks for sharing that. That was a good one, Maxime. All right, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Yes, you're very welcome, Tom. You're very welcome, Rosalie. You're very welcome, Merci and Sharon. Thanks so much for joining. Steve, we got a question from you, and we're just about coming up on time. So if there are any other questions, these are the last minutes to post them. Does Power Query do the same thing as Power BI? Can we leverage one tool to work with another? Yes. Power BI utilizes Power Query. It also utilizes the data model via Power Pivot, utilizing DAX. These are features that you can do in Excel, and Power BI will give you even more flexibility with that. So when you use Power Query or Power Pivot, you're not only learning Excel, you're also learning what you can do in Power BI. Great question. Anthony, thank you so much. Thank you, Anthony. I'm really glad that you joined it. I appreciate all of your questions and your participation. Kunal, thank you so much for joining. Maxime, thank you for all your questions. Letitia, thank you for joining. Danny, Mark, Awais, where can we see the recording? We're going to go ahead and email that out to all of you right afterwards. We're just about coming up on time. This was a jam-packed session. I've never had a webinar where I was able to really field each and every single question and answer all of them. I can promise you this will not be our last webinar with how much fun this was over here. If there are any other questions, I've been doing this now for maybe about 2 years, posting content. If any of you have ever sent me an email, you'll know that I mean this when I say that I personally respond to each and every email that comes through my inbox. Unless you just like ask me for like free courses or templates or just like asking for a job, I may not respond to that. Even with that, I may respond though. So if there are any other questions, any other feedback, please, I love reading that. Go ahead and send that via email. I may not respond same day because I have tons and tons of emails, but I promise I will eventually respond. So thank you so much for joining. This was really great. And I look forward. Susan, sorry that you weren't able to join earlier with our technical difficulty, but we'll be sending out that recording. So that about wraps up our session. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I can't wait to see you at the next one, and I can't wait to hear the feedback on our Excel course. Have an amazing day, and see you guys next time.